Abraham Lincoln, Uncle Abe, is one of the most famous and beloved presidents of the United States. His rule was accompanied by a bloody and brutal conflict, the Civil War between the North and the South. But the result of this war was one of the major political and social transformations in the history of the states, the emancipation of the black population from slavery. Why was a politician who changed the face of the country ruthlessly assassinated? The future president was born in Kentucky in 1809. Lincoln's father was a simple farmer, and when the boy was only 7 years old, he lost all his fortune. So the family lived poorly, and little Abe did not even receive a school education. He attended school for only a year, as he had to help the family with the household chores, but he still learned to read and write. He kept his love of reading until his death. After reaching adulthood, Lincoln took fate into his own hands and found a job. It took him to New Orleans, where he visited a slave market. What he saw there made a strong impression on him and laid the seeds for his future dislike of slavery. After 1832, Abraham Lincoln began to actively study law and soon became a successful lawyer. It is noteworthy that he helped the poor for free. Living in Illinois at the time, he traveled all over the state to conduct court cases. At the same time, Lincoln became increasingly interested in politics and was elected to the Illinois legislature, and in 1846 became a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. While he disapproved of the U.S.-Mexican War, which began the same year, he was nevertheless in favor of providing money for disabled soldiers and wives who had lost their husbands. He was also in favor of women's suffrage. Lincoln's attitude to slavery is interesting. On the one hand, he did not approve of slavery and was in favor of freeing slaves. On the other hand, he understood that the abrupt abolition of slavery could harm the economy, so he was a supporter of a gradual, phased abandonment of slavery. In particular, he sought to stop the spread of slavery throughout the country. However, Lincoln also celebrated the superiority of the white race over the black race, so he could not be described as completely devoid of racist views. His moderate positions on slavery led to his election as president in 1860 from the Republican Party. Lincoln's election was not to the liking of the people of the southern states, the original slaveholding regions. As a result, 7 southern states, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana and others, announced their secession from the country, which led to the Civil War of 1861 to 1865. The war was fought with mixed success. Lincoln realized that only a radical solution to the slave issue would end the country's division. In 1865, the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was passed, abolishing slavery altogether. This changed the course of the war, turning it essentially into a war against slavery and depriving the southern states of external support. In addition, from that moment on, the Army of the North began to recruit blacks, which increased its power. On the 9th of April 1865, the Southern Army capitulated. Lincoln, elected a year earlier for a second term, proclaimed his readiness to renounce revenge against the losers, restore the economy of the South and build a harmonious union. Alas, he did not have time to fulfill his intentions. On April 14, 1865, the president headed to Washington's Ford's Theater for a performance of Our American Cousin. Meanwhile, a certain John Wilkes Booth had quietly entered the theater. He came from an acting family and was himself an actor by profession. Booth was a staunch opponent of Lincoln and the abolition of slavery. And although he was not a Southerner, but during the Civil War he became a secret agent of the Army of the South, supplied medicines. Towards the end of the war, Booth joined the plot against Abraham Lincoln. The actor knew the Ford's Theater building well and took the lead in the impending assassination. He managed to get to the box where an unsuspecting Lincoln was enjoying the performance. Booth shot the president in the head in the funniest scene of the play. It is believed that in doing so he uttered the Latin phrase such as the fate of tyrants, which is also attributed to Brutus, Caesar's assassin. Lincoln was moved from the theater to a house across the street. But the next morning the president died. Booth himself managed to slip out of the theater in the commotion, but he was soon overtaken by the police and fatally wounded. Despite the official abolition of slavery, the death of the president made the situation of the country's black population more difficult. For many more years, they could not receive the rights and freedoms that Abraham Lincoln wanted to grant them.